Another week rolls to an end, and here we are, enjoying a bit of tipple with friends, discussing things that we know nothing about, as usual. If you take us seriously, you really ought to have your head examined. We are going to have something nice. Well, I don't know what you're having.
You've run out of adjectives.
Yeah, because I mean, how many ways are there to say tea? But I think more interesting is we're in a new venue. Why are we in a new venue?
Well, our producer was a bit irresponsible with our power arrangements.
Well, in fairness,
so we decided to decamp to Tinashe's office, and we've got this lovely backdrop of the city. So thank you, Tinashe, for being our host.
Thank you very much.
No,
and,
you must
and
welcome.
Zesa, thank you very much
for making this possible.
for making this possible.
It's been an interesting adventure moving to this set.
Yeah. Should we ask, what are you drinking?
Well, Zimbabwean tea, local tea, Tanganda, and enjoying it. And you know, the sun is setting, and the backdrop is just lovely. So I'm looking forward to this one.
What is that? Another cravat?
Yes, it is. It is.
And he's wearing socks today. so explain this. Is spring over? Why are we wearing socks?
No, it's the type of sock, right? And these are, and I've said this before, even the blazer, the idea is the type of wool that you'll be wearing. And this is light wool. And the cravat, again, is light wool.
So you change the rules every week?
No, I don't change the rules. It's just that you haven't been following.
What are we?
But he's a fan of Zimbabwean craftsmanship, and I distinctly remember being dragged kicking and screaming to a place that makes buttons and other silverware for clothing.
Oh, really?
And apparently, you can tell us a bit more, but I suspect that the buttons on your blazer are from this place.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, and I'm glad you noticed. That's good. But for some of our Sartorial friends, you might be pleased to know that Patrick Malvers is a jeweler in Zimbabwe.
Are you getting paid for this placement?
Well, no, I'm not, but I think he should.
I think the producer will have a word with you.
But he was kind enough to make my buttons, and from what he said, and you know, you have to check up with him. He says only a few people have had these kind of buttons made, and one of them is the King of Spain. And yeah, so I feel like I'm
royalty.
Anyway,
what are we
and I
drinking?
do feel like that whenever I wear my blazer, so I enjoy it.
Well, I think you feel like that all the time in your ice cream colored pants. What are we drinking today?
Oh, okay. So today we are going bourbon, which is American, Kentucky straight. It's called Knob Creek. It's named after the place in Kentucky where one of my favorite U.S. presidents grew up.
Trump?
No. That would be Tinashe's favorite.
Okay, so which was
Abraham Lincoln, the man who ended slavery.
No,
You know, have you heard of the Gatsby Address, the Emancipation Proclamation? Yeah. So this is, okay. Right. I'm struggling a little bit. But yeah, this is a 9-year-old.
9. That's an interesting age statement.
It's 100 proof. It's cask strength, so it's not for the faint of heart.
What does it mean when you say cask strength?
So basically, the alcohol content in whiskeys varies from as little as 37, 38% to as high as 53, 55%. And so cask strength, I think, starts at about 50%. It's stronger, and it tends to be more flavorful, but it's harder to drink neat. So the connoisseurs recommend that you add a dash of water. Also, the stronger whiskeys tend to fare, well, bourbons particularly, tend to fare better in cocktails. But this one we're going to have on ice. Allow me to pour Mavuku's pops.
Very nice. Fruity. I pick up hints of pineapple.
Not as strong. But, yeah.
Not as
What do I know?
Not as PT.
Okay, not as PT.
Yeah.
Well, bourbons are not the least bit peaty. They tend to be quite, the flavor tends to be on the sweet side of the spectrum.
Well, and by the way, this is courtesy of Vincent Securities.
On their second birthday.
Celebrating their second anniversary. Well, you should say we.
Well, I have a very tough employer, and when it comes to buying or sponsoring with alcohol, he kicks and screams. But thank you, Ranga.
Ranga. Cheers to Ranga. Cheers. Yeah. Delivers on the sweetness as you'd expect from a bourbon. You get the hints of citrus. Yeah, I think I could get used to it. Although you know I'm a Scotch guy, right?
Well, no, I think you're a whiskey guy.
Anyway, we've had an interesting week.
Put it mildly.
Lots of things have happened. Last week we talked about arrests and the currency, and this week there were more arrests and there were conferences. The governor met with manufacturers, bankers, retailers, and they solved it.
Or so they say.
What do you make of it?
Well, I think it's, what's that Shakespearean book, Much Ado About Nothing? That's how I would capture this. I think there's a lot of talking that's happening, but if you think about it, we've had this problem numerous times from the last 20 years. And we all know what will eventually happen. We know what the end game is. And I don't know why we're having this, song and dance. But I suppose it...
But the industrialists and the retailers and everybody, they said, no, we've got this thing nailed.
What do you expect them to say?
I'm going to be much more magnanimous. So I think that...
You always are.
No. You are the polite and magnanimous one. I tend to call a spade a spade. I think that in as much as I agree with what Tinashe has said, I think that just like SI 127, we had a pronouncement from government that I think most of us in business thought was a net negative, not particularly helpful. I think that the government is given to engaging the market and the business community and listening to what we have to say and maybe making adjustments. So I think that the arrests are like the initial phase of SI 127, where they had a discussion without involvement of the rest of the market, and they made this pronouncement, and the market reacted and said, look, this is not going to work because of A, B, C, D, and D. And I think this is what's happening now. They engage CZI, they engage the market, and I think they are, if I was to bet on what's going to happen next, is that they will pivot and not be as ardent as they have been.
You're clearly very magnanimous. So next week, everything's going to change.
Well, with SI 127, everything didn't change, right? It's not like things went and to where they were in multi-currency, right? So SI 127 established that it's illegal to refuse settlement in Zim dollars, right? But that's still the case. But then the reversal was, but it's okay to transact in US dollars. And I think that what we're seeing with these arrests, in particular the CFI one, is they're saying that if you divide the Zim dollar price by the US dollar price, the effective rate should be the
85.
Well, it's now 88. The effective rate should be auction rate. And I think that the feedback that they're getting now from the business sector is that that's clearly not going to work. And if I was a betting man, and I am, I would bet that next week or the week after, they will come around to a worldview that actually it doesn't work.
Well, I think I beg to differ. I think, I'm feeling particularly like a literature professor of sort. So I would say that
I think you always feel like a
professor.
like a professor. You dress like one, and you most certainly pontificate like one.
okay, so this is a literature class. Take it as a literature class. And I would say that SI 127 was a preamble, right? That was a warning. That was the show starting. So that's the beginning of the show, where you're dimming the lights, and it's the opening act, and it's familiar characters. It's a familiar plot. So I think that's what's very clear. We've seen this show before, and we know exactly how it will end. But obviously, the twists and turns will be different. But I think we've seen this show before.
Very kind.
He means naive.
We've seen this show before, and 127 should have been a warning that SI was like, guys, are you sure this is
Dojamade.
Handitone, and they're not going to back down where we are. And we've seen it, and we know exactly how it's going to end. Do I think that it's a different script or it's a different plot? I don't think so. But I think that as any theater show will attest, there are always twists and turns. The story is the same, but be sure of twists and turns. So I may not be able to predict what those twists and turns would be. And certainly the characters are changed, but we know the scene, we know the script, and we know how it ends.
So, okay, let me indulge you further. How does this end?
Okay, so what I would do is just look back. So I won't tell you how this one ends. Otherwise, I'll take the fun out of this particular...
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert for people like Rufaro who think that this is a different script altogether. But if you remember Gono, we went through this.
How can anybody forget?
Yeah, exactly. And he arrested 23,000. He had an auction.
He's got similar initials to other people. But anyway.
So we had an auction. So Gono had an auction, and it lasted 22 months. And this one has been going on for 15. We're now in the 16th month. So I'm quite interested in finding out whether it will go longer than 22 or shorter than 22.
Nigeria's one has gone on much longer.
Well, you must understand, Nigeria, again, those are the twists and turns. It's the same story, but it's the twists and turns. So you find that Nigeria has gone through these cycles for 3 or 4 times in the last 40 years. So it does that. But I think that sense somewhat prevails in Nigeria. Here, sense doesn't prevail. So if you look at just purely the amount of money that's been printed since, let's call it 2017, up until now, the amount of money that's been printed has been growing.
How much has been printed?
So the numbers that we have, the latest numbers that we have are as of July, and it's about 300 billion. And of that 300 billion, about 42% is in FCA. Now, this is at 85 or thereabouts. But this is the interesting bit, that at the beginning of the auction, the FCAs were, when we look at our total money supply, FCAs used to contain about 60% of the money supply. So it's moved down from 60% down to 42%. What it just tells you from a theory of relativity is that the one end...
about physics?
Literature, physics, this is the show.
He's got his ice cream pants back on.
But if your FCAs, the amount of FCA, the amount of US dollars in the official system has actually been coming down as a percentage of the total money supply.
The money's gone up.
But okay,
in absolute numbers, and that's the thing.
Can I ask you a question about those FCA
But the Zim
balances?
dollars has actually been increasing at a faster rate than the FCAs have been going up.
In your opinion, Tinashe?
Sorry, before we change the subject. So, you're saying the number of US dollars in absolute terms has increased.
Yes.
The number of Zim dollars has increased by some
256% over the same period, over a year.
But the rate hasn't moved.
Exactly.
Isn't this where the problem is?
You're an A-grade student.
Oh, thank you, Professor.
No, but here's my question, if you'll allow me, is that FCA balance is it real? Is it like, is it backed by legitimate hard currency? Or when it was 1-to-1 gauge, a few years ago, and all our balances were US dollars, is it that, are those FCA nostril balances not the same as our RTGS balances before the state conceded that actually that's not hard currency?
Okay, well,
You might be right and
no,
not
but
so
I
right.
can speak with a little bit of authority here
Okay,
because
yeah,
I am a
maybe,
banker.
yeah.
So we did have a point a few months ago where there was a bit of a divergence, but to RBZ's credit, they did correct that, and they paid back the banks the gap. So as the numbers we're looking at as of July, that 1.6, 1.7,
1.6, yeah.
1.7 billion US dollars is roughly represented by money that is sitting offshore.
I tend to agree as well. But what we don't know is what is sitting on the other side of that. So what sort of liabilities are those corporates carrying that are offshore? We don't know that.
Because it strikes me that if you have 1.7 billion in hard currency local deposits, why are we
No,
struggling?
it's not local deposits.
Local. But his point is, if locals own 1.7 billion dollars, why are we short of US dollars? And I think this is a good point to take a break and a good point to start the next segment, because that is a very important question. Why do we think we're short of US dollars when we only need 40 or 50 million a week, according to what the auction tells us? And we've got a stock of 1.7 billion. We're going to powder our noses, fill up our drinks, go to the little boys' room, and we'll see you in 2 minutes. Welcome back. And just before we went away, Rufaro, you were trying to ask a very pertinent question.
Yeah, so if we have 1.7 billion in deposits, hard currency, how do we have, number one, 10 to 15 week delay in settlement of auction receipts?
Reported.
Well, this is the CZI, so I think it's credible. That's number one. And why is even allocation a challenge if there's so much money?
So you say the banks should just lend this money to their customers?
They should just, allocate it and pay.
No, but it's not the bank's money.
It's not the Reserve Bank's money.
This money belongs to
Corporates.
companies.
So why is this money not presenting at the auction?
Because well, first of all, remember, when you look at the monetary system in Zimbabwe, and when you look at RBZ accounts and you look at the net foreign assets, we're actually negative. So despite the 1.7, the central bank actually owes external funders about $5 billion. So our net foreign asset position is actually negative 2.5 or so billion dollars. So we're in a negative position as a monetary system.
But that 2.5 is on the Reserve Bank balance sheet.
Yeah, it's on the. So I was going to do it structurally so that we all understand the context.
I'll have less. I'll have less of it. I'll pour some water.
That if you're going to look at the 1.7, look at the total monetary system. But then if you're going to look at it in its peculiar sense and say, well, okay, we know that the people who owe the monetary system is actually RBZ and government. What about the corporate sector? What is the corporate sector doing with that particular 1.7? So what we know, we don't have full information, but what we know is there is $1.7 billion, but we don't know whether it's incumbent or unincumbent. By that I mean, remember we've been building the last 2 years where we've had global supply chain problems, right? Where people had the money, but they haven't actually spent it, right? And they're expecting to spend a lot of this money when the global supply chains actually start opening up. So that's one. The second thing is we don't know whether these corporates also have debt against those particular deposits.
Sorry, I want to interrupt.
Yeah.
Who are these corporates?
These are mostly
because the
exporters.
companies that most people work for aren't even paying salaries. So who
Well,
are these guys?
you have
is it
your
1,000 companies? Is it 10 companies? Is it?
we don't know, but we know that the major exporters, so your platinum exporters, they've had a good run in the last 2 years. And what they've benefited from is COVID is such that their cost base has actually been very low. So when you look at the global supply chains, they've been pushing the product out there and their cost base has actually been low. So they've had the good fortune of having excess or a surplus.
So this is your platinum producers, your gold producers.
So
Not so
Zimplats-
much your gold producers,
Zimplats,
but
which
I
is
would say
listed in Australia, reported 500 million plus profit in the last
$500
financial-
million.
Oh, yeah.
One company made $500 million in this country.
Absolutely.
Wow.
yeah. So it's a good time
They've
for
got more
them.
money than the country.
Yes,
Okay.
you can say that. So
Well,
you
if
do
you
have
believe
people
that,
like that.
the money that they have in their bank accounts here can actually be shipped out to make payments.
Yeah, it can. We talked about it last
It's-
segment.
But you don't know their plans. Their plans could be, because the same Zimplats, if you think about it, if they're to expand their investments in Zimbabwe, it requires $500 million to $1
same
billion. So, of course, when you look at it and you look at 1.7, you might think it's a lot of money. But when you look at the encumbrances around that 1.7 billion, it brings in a lot of
sorry,
complexity.
my head's going back to this. One mine
Yep.
made $500 million.
And this is in the public domain.
US
It's listed,
dollars.
so you can go to the Zimplats website.
so-
You can download the annual
So we-
report. They've made more than $500 million in net profit. So they've paid taxes, they've paid royalties, they've met all their statutory obligations, and they've still made
And
$500 million.
so we can safely assume Unki and Mimosa
Well,
might not have $500 million, but they've got hundreds of millions.
their numbers aren't in the public domain. I can't speak to them, but I suspect that they're likely in the same ballpark.
And this is some of the money that is sitting on these bank accounts.
Yes.
So how do we get this money that is sitting on these bank accounts to become available to the rest of us?
It's not your money. First of all, I think that's the sort of attitude that got us into problems in the last 20 years.
It's not our money.
It's not your money.
It's our land.
not
It's our land. It's our minerals. It's our money.
and I think this is the bigger problem. It's expectations. So a lot of people, if you see a lot of people who've got an extra dollar, deciding that they're not going to invest it, they're going to keep it as liquid cash, is because their expectations in the local environment is actually that the situation will get worse rather than better. And they think that this money will be good for a rainy day.
So they'd rather keep cash because you can run away with your cash. You can't run away with a new shaft.
I think those are the expectations. Yes, you're quite right.
So what do we do to make them?
No, but you see,
Make that money available.
I think you're asking the wrong question because in a capitalist society with a government, the government's entitlement is to tax your income, your revenues, your capital
And they
gains,
do
whatever
that.
it is, right? And once they take their cut, what you are left with as a company, as an individual, as a trust, or whatever your legal description, that's yours to do whatever you want.
No, but nobody disputes that. But we say, okay, so
He's asking that.
we
if
now
you've
end
got
up
all
with these
this
people that have
money
got more money than the country.
and
how do we
you've
get
got
them
a
to give us their
commodity
money?
boom? You've got a commodity boom. Why is it they're not investing it? Right? I think that's
Why
the
don't they
question,
share their
right?
money with us?
Well,
No,
let's not have such socialist
Different language,
notions
but-
of sharing. I mean,
but-
I think then you're actually, going into.
So why does Tinashe?
forest.
Let's, I'm not going to use a sexist example. I'm going to use Tinashe.
Don't use a sexist example.
Why does Tinashe like particular fashion brands?
Because that's just stupid. Okay.
No, but seriously.
Make your
So,
point.
so my point is,
Preferences.
they 170 plus nations on the planet, and there's only so much capital that can be allocated to explore the investment opportunities out there. Okay, and the capital is going to go to the most attractive opportunities. Yeah. So if we want this 1.7 billion to get out and play, as it were, to exercise itself in the economy, be involved in building things, we've got to make it attractive to them. They have to be excited by the opportunities in the marketplace.
But they cannot be, because again, you're looking at it with a myopic eye. The monetary system is not okay. So the guys with the 1.7 are the guys who've decided that actually we know that the monetary system is not okay and we cannot play, but we're just going to keep our bet.
Okay.
So we're in agreement, right?
Okay, but fine. So the principals don't want to bring their money in, but this money is sitting in local banks. Why are the local banks not sweating this money?
They have the same expectation.
What do you mean they have the same expectation?
They have the same expectation.
They've got to pay salaries.
No. But actually, you're a banker, so I'm not. So I appreciate this opportunity to blast you guys as a community.
No, answer the question.
No. So I'm going to make the case here that this time last year in this country, we had hyperinflation, right? Did you see any bank in this country advise its depositors that actually it's not a good idea to hold some dollars because of hyperinflation? Every day that you have money in the bank, it's losing value. Did your community do that?
I don't like getting arrested.
But he has a good point. I think the Rufaro has a good point.
Yeah, but
the point I'm making,
you know,
the point
to actually support his point.
No.
To actually support
so
his point.
those guys holding nostro US dollar balances have no incentive to listen to you bankers.
No, but the bank can lend that money.
Yeah, but
why is the bank not lending?
No.
Okay, can I answer the question?
Yeah.
Because you guys are not going to answer my question. Or do you want to try and answer the question?
No, you can go ahead.
Clearly, because you're the banker.
Yeah, clearly you've got your own.
It's simply a function of uncertainty.
Yeah,
right?
Expectations.
So most banks a few months ago got a letter from the central bank saying they could lend in US dollars only to exporters and to NGOs and employees of NGOs and exporters. Why? Because remember, after SI 127, using US dollars remains illegal in this country.
Mm-hmm.
So who can borrow US dollars and pay them? Only those that legally earn US dollars.
And so here's the question: like even if you took,
I think let him finish. I think
he's finished.
Are you?
Yeah.
Mommy and daddy.
I think he's finished. So even if you took that pronouncement at face value, right? Can you say with high conviction that in this part of the world, if you take a policy pronouncement of that nature, right, and you act on it, there is a non-zero probability that you'll wake up one day and be told, anymore.
Earlier on in the last segment, you know what you said?
You can't remember. He's been drinking.
Yeah, no, you can't. You were the guy who was telling us that we must trust what the Reserve Bank and what the government has done.
No, I did not say that. I think you're mischaracterizing what I said.
No, that's exactly what you say.
No,
you said,
that
you know
is
what?
not
they
what I
tend
said.
to make these pronouncements
No.
and then come around when
No.
industry,
What I said.
when they get feedback from industry and
so
then
let me be very clear about what I said and
right.
what I meant so that there's no ambiguity.
Okay.
The point I was making is that unlike in previous dispensations, right, with SI 127, right, I thought SI 127 was a really bad idea, by the way. I think it got everything wrong, right?
you know it's still a law, right?
Yes, I do. But what I found commendable is that after the outcry from the business community about SI 127, the authorities engaged and they made some constructive changes. What they should have done is to just say
they're now arresting people based on that particular law.
Yeah, and I'm saying don't.
And my point was,
I think your attitude is fatalistic about
no,
the arrests.
it's not fatalistic.
It's not
And
fatalistic.
it goes to the core of the issue on the 1.7 billion. I run a bank. I've got depositors' money. They've given me US dollars. I've promised to pay them back US dollars on demand or on whatever agreed terms, and I go and lend that money to somebody who promises me they'll give me back US dollars. But the law says, unless they're an exporter, whatever they're doing to earn US dollars is illegal. What comfort do I have that if I lend you those US dollars that I got from Tinashe, I'll be able to give him back?
And by the way, if you start trading that US dollars, there's a 20% that Tuli will take away from you.
Well, that's fine.
Or that will convert
No,
at
it's fine because he can show me
official rate.
He can show me his business model and show me the 20% is fine, and he can still pay me. But the point is,
No. What
he's
did you
trading
say?
illegally.
No. The minute you start trading the 1.7, right? 20% of the transaction will be converted at official rate.
No, I get what you're saying.
But
I'm saying
I think
he can still demonstrate that he's fine.
I
He's
think
making enough money.
I
to
think
pay.
the points that you guys are discussing at the moment are academic.
They're not academic.
No, they're academic.
That's the core of the issue.
The
These
core
are
of the issue.
practical
No. The core of the issue. The reason why.
So you think banks just don't want to lend it?
Hear me out. The reason why the banks are not lending that money is because of the policy inconsistency. So right now the policy,
What we've been
the policy.
It's really hard talking to a 6-year-old.
The policy right now might be that it's perfectly legal to lend to exporters and NGOs and employees of exporters and NGOs, right? But you don't know what the policy is going to be in 6 months.
That's
right?
uncertainty.
So that's the reason why they aren't
That's why
lending.
George said
Do you
that
listen?
uncertainty.
No.
That's
the case
exactly
was
what he
making.
said. That's what George said. Says
You
people are not landing because the environment has so much uncertainty.
Because
And I said it's
The
because
legal
of the
framework.
expectations.
No. So it's not. It's. I think what's certain right now is
that-
policy inconsistency.
okay, can we make a deal? Can we make a deal with her?
Yeah.
I will give you $100, and you promise to give me back $100 under whatever conditions, and you go and find somebody to lend it to.
Why would I do that instead of buying a bottle of whiskey?
So why would the bank do that? Why should the bank do that?
No, but I think we're all in agreement here. I think the bottom line is that we live in a policy framework in which one of the biggest things that can go wrong is that there is a policy change that will make you lose money. So in a policy framework of that nature, the safest course of action is
to do nothing.
Yeah, to do nothing, to
Exactly.
be conservative. To say, oh, you've deposited $100 with me, I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to charge you,
You know what?
0.1% to hold your money. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
And that's exactly how markets behave. Because something is rotten in the state of Denmark, and nobody wants to talk about it. So people are like, oh, okay, if that's how you want to behave, please go ahead, but not with my money. What I'm going to do, because I expect we've seen this story before, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold back and wait for the play to just play out, everything to play out until the music stops.
So what I'm curious about, and if you'll indulge me, when we think about these arrests that are happening and all this aggressive regulatory action in terms of the power market rate, right? What I've been applying my mind to over the last few days is, let's imagine Zimbabwe a scenario in which the power market just went poof and it disappeared, right? Nobody traded on the power market, right?
Because they're afraid to get arrested.
For that and moral and other reasons.
Because they're good people.
Right? But let's assume that happened. Let's assume everybody in this country decided, you know what, if I've got $100 in my back pocket, I'm not going to trade it on the power market, right? Do you guys think we'd be better off if that happened? Because this is what Treasury and the central bank thinks.
I think this is a good place for us to take a break. Top up drinks, powder noises, go to the little boys' room. We'll be back in 2 minutes. So
Yeah. So there've been a bunch of arrests, and I think that you know, in the public discourse and certainly in my interactions where I hang out, people have been asking the question whether the people who've been arrested are they the right people, are they the wrong people, what's going on, and in my mind, the question that arose is not are we arresting the right people or the wrong people? It's are arrests arresting the problem, right? So if we were to give the police and FIU and Reserve Bank all the
unfettered powers.
no, if we were to assume that they are arresting all the right people, right? Does that mean that we're going to get the outcome that we're looking for, that the parallel market is going to go poof and disappear and everything is going to go through official channels? Is that what's going to happen?
Well, let's put it into numbers. If Gono at his time arrested 23,000 people, how many?
That many?
Yeah. How many people does the current government need to arrest for them to arrest the power market? Let's
And
think
did
about
Kono
it.
succeed?
Obviously, it didn't. But, you know, we're playing a game here, and I want to play to its natural conclusion. How many people do you think that they would need to arrest for them to arrest everybody?
So the point I want to make is that the question I want to ask rather is, are arrests going to arrest the problem? And
No, it's an impossibility.
and I think that arrests cannot arrest
a
the
fall
problem
on.
because for a number of reasons. Now, I think that's interesting in a certain way, but I think what's even more interesting, right, as analysts, is the question that if the parallel market ceased to exist, if people stopped trading on the parallel market completely, and all trades happened at 88 at the official rate, right? Does it follow that we as a country would be better off? I think that's a fundamental question that's not being interrogated. And I've applied my mind to this a little bit. And I'm pretty certain
So
that the answer is no.
You asked the question and you've got the answer to it.
But I want to ask you guys.
That's what he does.
Yeah, I want to ask you guys. What do you think, Tinashe? If every Zimbabwean tomorrow stopped trading on the parallel market, would we be better off?
And that's why I said, let's look at the numbers. So you're asking an impossible.
No, I'm not.
It's impossible.
I'm not asking you.
Okay.
I'm
well,
asking the I want you to interrogate the
okay,
hypothetical.
Okay, so as we're interrogating the hypothetical, let's look at the key axes. So, if by arresting all these bad actors, we kill the parallel market, would we have less demand for foreign currency?
Obviously not. In fact, the demand would actually increase.
Would we have more inflows of foreign currency?
Obviously not.
So I think you have your answer.
What will actually happen is, if people are not being satiated on the parallel market, it means that they're going to move the official market, and the official market, it's only giving out 36 million in a year, in a week. So if you assume that
it's nearly 2 billion a year.
Yeah, but if you assume we're importing 8 billion, our imports are 8 billion. We're exporting 8 billion and we're importing 8 billion. And
so
a lot of
where's the 6 coming from?
Sorry?
Where's the 6 coming from?
Which 6?
Between the 8 and the 2. I'd say 36 times 52 plus a bit extra comes to about 2.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is there are a lot of people who are using their US dollars. So in fact, I think I said this some time back, that about 60% of our trades, and I suspect with the arrests, a lot more, it's now moved to about 70-75%, is just purely in US dollars, where people have decided that they're not going to trade in Zim dollars because it has moral hazards and it has its own hazards.
But what's the source of this US dollar?
Exports. We're exporting $8 billion. And if you go into remittances and aid, I think that's how we get to $8 billion.
So JPM's right. So if we just tell these people that they can't sell their money on the parallel market, it'll become available on the official.
We can't even satiate our demands at this particular moment. Remember, for every export, 70% of every dollar that you export, you're importing something.
No, but it's part of the import number. We export 8, we import
No,
8.
but
Remember, we have a priority list. People forget this, that actually for you to go on the auction, you have to be on the priority list. So you've got this queue, and you know, there's an interesting analogy. I think it was you who gave that analogy. I do know you liked nightclubs that much. But
Once upon a time when I was young.
But I thought your analogy was quite apt, that it's like people going into a nightclub and you decide that only a certain kind of people with these 5 characteristics can get into the nightclub, but there's still a long queue. Even after you've decided that only 5 characteristics will actually allow you to get into the nightclub.
Okay. Allow me to articulate my own anecdote. When you stand in a queue to go in a nightclub, as anyone who has ever stood in a queue to go into a nightclub knows, you stand there, you have no idea whether the nightclub is full or not. You have no idea whether the guy at the bouncer at the front of the queue is being fair or not. Every once in a while, he says 2 of you can come in, and that's it. You wait until your turn comes. And every once in a while, there's people that, as far as you're concerned, are behind you in line, that he points to, and they come to the front and they go in. And there's absolutely no transparency. And the only thing that this does is foster corruption and all sorts of other wayward behavior, such that when somebody from the nightclub next door comes and says, please come to our nightclub where there's no queue, you leave the queue.
But it's just a little more expensive. It's double the price. And no questions asked. You don't need to have these characteristics. You don't need to wear a jacket to get in.
And isn't this the point that CZI was making this week? That if we must have an auction, let's make it transparent so we understand how many people are in the nightclub, how much are the beers in the nightclub.
But you also don't need this priority.
But I think so.
Because as long as you have,
whenever I hear anybody talk about the auction as if it's an auction, it grates me. It's not an auction.
But we've accepted that it's not.
Yeah. So I
We've
think
accepted that it's a queue.
So let's not pretend that it's an auction.
But that's our point. Let's accept that it's a queue to get in.
And I think
and
from a Zimbabwean perspective, like over the last 20 years, we've had this issue with fuel. There have been queues, there have been all sorts of pricing regimes and rules and mechanisms and whatnot, right? And
so you've seen this show before.
yes, and one of the things that I think post November 2017 that the new government figured out, to their credit, is that it doesn't work. It doesn't work to come up with an RTGS price for fuel that is a subsidy to the region for whatever reason, right? If you want fuel, you must pay in US dollars. And today, there are no queues. People can disagree about whether this is right or wrong, but fuel works.
And the demand has actually come off for fuel.
And so what vexes me
People are
is,
not making unnecessary
But the important thing about fuel is it's sold in US dollars.
yeah, but okay, you know what is even more US dollar than fuel?
What?
US dollars. Right? They are not our currency, it's foreign. By definition, this is a foreign currency, right? You can't just get people to give it to you, right? So why have we decided that we, okay, I want to put this into perspective, right? So Africa, the whole of Africa, there's 1 billion people who live on this continent, right? Africa has probably more land mass than every continent on the planet except Asia, right? We contribute only 2.5% to global GDP, right? So why do we think if we're generous to the rebasement of our GDP, and we say we're a $25 billion economy. Why do we think this $25 billion economy in a 70, 80 trillion dollar global GDP economy, we can set the rate that we must exchange with US dollars? What makes us think that? Right? We can set this rate.
So you're answering your own question about arrests.
Right? So we are saying the rate is 88. There's some bureaucrat, hopefully this human is in an air-conditioned office to to put out these egregious models, right, where they've decided that the fair exchange rate between US dollars and the Zim dollar.
Do you know a fascinating anecdote? That the same individuals, less than 2 years ago, came out with a fair rate. You know what the fair rate was?
What?
It was 6. They said, you know what, the fair rate for Zimbabwe is actually 6. So it's quite interesting that now it's 88.
Yeah.
The same office is producing these two different numbers.
We think we can tell the world that it's the rate that they should engage with our country.
Well, we can, if we stop printing money. So the numbers you alluded to earlier, the July Reserve Bank numbers, suggest that money supply grew by 9% in 1 month between June and July.
Yeah, it did.
That's a big number. So 9 times 12 is 108.
Yeah, about
Yes,
108. But
then
actually,
you're excluding the compound effect.
And within
And
that
perception.
period, it was actually 256%.
Over 12 months.
Over 12 months, it
So
was 256%.
why should the rate not move by 256%?
This is
Or
a
more because
the
of
amount
perception.
currency
Because we're so small, it is perception. Like I think that anybody studying markets or behavioral economics understands that psychology plays an important role, right? So if the rate is 1 today, but the three of us all believe fervently that it's going to be 1.2 tomorrow, right? What will it be tomorrow? Notwithstanding that maybe...
No,
but that's why you must arrest the three of us.
His point is, actually, it doesn't matter what we think. If these guys were not printing, the rate would not move.
Because even if we thought it should be 1.2 tomorrow,
If they're
none
not
of us
printing,
would have the money to buy it. at
And
1.2.
a very curious thing is, you reverted back to November 2017, is the 4 months after. And this is quite phenomenal and quite remarkable, right? That the amount of money in the economy actually came off. It was $8 billion, and in some months, it actually went as low as $7.8 billion. So they were not printing. And it moved from month on month from 10% to 0% to negative, right? So it's actually possible. It's actually possible that the central bank can
exercise discipline.
Some discipline. But because what eventually happened after those 4 months, it's just shot up by 33%. And this is the discipline that we've continuously talked about, that I think that we are at a place where we should not be allowed to have Zim dollars in our monetary system.
You know what? And this is an interesting moment. This is the moment where I admit Tinashe is right. We need a currency board. We need to give up control of our currency. Because we've proved over many, many cycles that we can't manage a currency.
Well done.
I'm not shaking your hand, there's COVID.
Wow.
Well, I'm not shaking your hand. I don't agree. But I think. But
I'm quite happy that we are at least talking about a currency board.
What I'll give Tinashe credit for is we can debate about what solution is appropriate. Is it a currency board? Is it multi-currency regime? Is it moving on board with onto the rand monetary system in the same way that Namibia has and Lesotho? Like, these are viable options. But what's clear
That's also
is
currency
that
board.
what's clear is that we, as the government of Zimbabwe, have failed miserably managing the local currency. That's clear.
That's without doubt. And that's not an indictment to the current politicians. Germany couldn't manage their own. In fact, Israel,
but
people forget this, that in the late 1970s, that's like our age, right? 40 years ago, Israel could not manage. Israel could not manage their own currency.
But I mean, don't go far afield.
Right.
But let's stay here, right? We're not judging JPM harshly, because
Not at
before
all.
JPM, GG struggled, Tsumba struggled, Combo maybe to a lesser extent. The Rhodesians struggled. Going back to Cecil Rhodes's days, they struggled with the currency issue. There's something in our DNA
No, it's not.
No, it's not in our DNA.
as a nation.
We beg to differ.
I totally differ.
So what it is, it's very simple.
Totally different.
So I think that because I'm a fan of American economics, American politics,
American whiskey.
I prefer Irish and Scotch, but I like the whiskey as well. But so here's one of the reasons why I think that they've succeeded on the global stage, right? It's because they're so big, and there are so many players who are big and important that there's no oligarchy, or there's so many different forces fighting for supremacy that because no one can ascend to be a tyrant, they take
it's
the
way
path.
they've designed the system.
They take a path that is most accretive to the most people. And I think in smaller jurisdictions where tyrants can emerge and rule for decades, there's less progress.
Okay, make your point.
I can make it for him.
Yes, please.
America knew that it was important to focus on innovation and not on manipulating the currency, and not on manipulating the monetary system, and not on manipulating savings. China understood that as well. Israel, Germany, everybody understands
Singapore.
that. So what Zimbabwe needs to realize is you do not grow by manipulating the monetary system. And you don't want people to be focusing on the monetary system. You want people to be making profit, right? And deciding on innovative ideas rather than deciding on, oh, okay, I've made this money, but I need to now take care of it because anything could happen to it. And I think that, and the idea of sovereignty, I don't know where it comes from, why it's even necessary.
I can tell you.
Okay, we're not going down that rabbit hole. And maybe this is a good place for us to end today's show. Unless somebody's got something very, very burning they want to say.
Well, maybe this is a good time to quote Adam Smith.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, you like Adam Smith, but you hate Keynes?
Yeah.
How is...
That's a rabbit hole, but I'm quite happy to have it some other time. But Adam Smith, there's a famous saying that Adam Smith said, and I particularly like it and enjoy it, that it is not the benevolence of the butcher nor the baker that you have dinner at your table. Rather, it's in their self-interest that you enjoy dinner every night.
I like that quote.
So maybe,
and I'm going to console your quote, and I'm going to quote an earlier quote that I was thinking about today that I thought was interesting from the 48 Laws of Power.
Yeah.
Which is that a man is more likely to repay a injury than a benefit, because gratitude is a burden, but revenge a pleasure.
Gratitude is a burden, but revenge a pleasure. You're very dark. I had something much lighter, but anyway. We come to the end of another show. We hope we've inspired thoughts. we hope we inspire conversations. I mean, look, surrounded by all this literature and wisdom, I'm still tempted to add my own 2 cents. Benjamin Franklin said, "Search others for their virtues, thyself for thy vices." I think that's sound advice as we try and solve this currency problem.
And this is the man on the $100 bill. So you want to promote the $100 bill? That's my sense from your message.
No. I think they're neither angels nor demons in this discussion. But what we've got to find is a solution that is optimal for all of us, for our nation. And that solution is going to be found in dialogue. Let's express ideas, let's share them, let's find the best way forward.
And more $100 bills.
Have a great weekend. Stay safe. COVID is real. Be good. If you can't be good, be good at it.